Hi, everybody. This is Alan Silva broadcasting from our studios here in Lemont. And I was just up on Facebook, and my producer reviewed Julian, just reviewed my new record called Alan Silva and the Electric Band. And he made a comment about my work on the orchestra synthesizer, which I'm going to so now we'll open the discussion about what he's saying in this article. I'd like you to hear it.
But, once more, and it's been like that a zillion times, we can read here disingenuous comments about Alan Silver's concept of orchestral synthesizer. It doesn't merge with acoustics, it's on the margins, etc. I knew this was the general vibe about Alan's synths well before I had the honor to produce him. That said, I can't but feel perfectly dispirited again at the lack of understanding, first, of the place of synthesizer in free jazz and free improvisation. You don't hear much about Teitelbaum or Alvin Curran, do you? Second, of the importance of Alan Silva as a recording artist within the past 6 years, 11 albums. Again, this is not specific to the Free Jazz Collective, who once granted a ****1-2 to one of these albums, though very few were reviewed, actually, compared to other more or less Middle East European glories of the past. But, frankly, can we change paradigms for a minute? Or at least the time span of a record or a concert? Are the only acceptable electronics in improvised music pedals, SFX applied to acoustic instruments or electric guitars? Synthesizer is not a thing of the past. It's been here for half a century, and it's not ready to go. When will the improvised music scene make itself available for this major intellectual change that occurred in all other fields of live and recorded music? Contemporary classical, rock, pop, heavy, hip-hop, dance, salsa, bossa, folk, folklore. The acceptance of electronic instruments and their orchestral possibilities. When will the assumptions of bad taste be overhauled?
Well, in answering to Julian's concept, I had very few interviews in the last several years, actually, by any major uh, writers in any magazines about my work on the synthesizer, actually. One article appeared in an English magazine when I did Emancipation Suite with uh, William Parker and the saxophone player, Mr. Jordan. And here I was playing an orchestral synthesizer uh, all the time. And the work of that particular, it was called Emancipation Suite. I was doing a series of concerts in the United States at the time about Emancipation Suite, and I did several for Eremite at and his concert series in New Mass. Now, getting on to the concept of why the synthesizer is not engaged, or how many synthesizer players are involved in the synthesizer in free jazz or improvisatorial music. This is a problem because in Europe, the synthesizer was developed in the United States, first of all. It was a Moog synthesizers and eventually Japanese and so forth. Japanese developed synthesizers to a highly developed degree. Yamaha in Japan had Yamaha schools of synthesizers. This didn't take place in Europe that much about what a synthesizer was. So a synthesizer in the West, coming from the Japanese production point of view, Yamaha, Casio, a whole bunch of this electronic instruments. Myself interested in synthesizers go all the way back to when I was working with Sun Ra. And number one, what I was fascinated by synthesizers in the later development of what we call patching, like layering different kinds of sounds on top of one another, and then creating what they call a patch. So if you are studying orchestration, for instance, on a synthesizer, for instance, so I looked at the synthesizer from a point of view as an orchestrator. I assumed that the synthesizer would, in the early days of my work at my institute for the Institute for Art Perception, I was working on a program. I bought a Yamaha plus a Macintosh computer, and I started thinking about how do you teach the synthesizer in music, and what role the synthesizer can play inside any ensemble. As you know, most synthesizers are developed by piano players. I mean, Sun Ra, but Sun Ra's an orchestra leader. Very few orchestra leaders are leading a band such as Sun Ra, which was a major thing for me as playing with him. So I saw the role of the synthesizer as part of an orchestra. I never saw it as a singular solo instrument. I always saw what role that this electronic instrument could play. And in Sun Ra's case, it gave that space dimension, the modern sound of what he was speaking about. He was speaking about space, and he's speaking about new worlds and so forth. So that synthesizer was a 21st century instrument that marched in what we call electronic music, for instance. But how electronic music interacts with acoustical music. So I saw the synthesizer from the point of view as I was an orchestra leader. As you know, I conduct orchestras. At the same time, I'm a fan of orchestration, how you put instruments together, and how you get different sounds together. So the synthesizer was, for me, how do you train somebody to play a synthesizer, string section, a violin section, horn sections, things like that. How does the synthesizer work as an orchestration behind that? Not like Herbie Hancock did it or Weather Report or something. I saw it as an orchestral concept at the very beginning. I never saw it as okay, you can make it as a solo instrument too. I mean, Sun Ra did that. But I saw how can you play behind an improviser and give him some information, and how you can interact with acoustical instruments. So I didn't see that this was an infringement on anybody. If you want to talk about sound, new sounds, I mean, Peter Brosman plays tenor saxophone. You understand? But I got 100 different kind of sounds that I can play. So most of the improvisers try to develop their own personal sound on their instrument. But a synthesizer is very broad. You got to have a really broad concept to work on a synthesizer. You have to know a lot about harmony. You have to learn a lot about how to place notes, how to place things behind people, and how you can color what they do and advance that point of view. So as a bass player, I took all those things that I learned. I'm a piano player. I studied piano and everything, and how I could put that together on the synthesizer. And that became what I call orchestral synthesizer. That's why I say orchestra synthesizer. I don't say I'm a synthesizer player. So these sounds I construct on the gig on an improvisatorial basis. It comes from free-form improvisations, not necessarily from a free jazz concept. I was the creator of the free-form improvisation ensemble, which was a much broader improvising vehicle, in fact. A lot of people discredit putting the European improvisation as opposed to American improvisation. You understand? I'm an American improviser. So I'm working within the American field. You understand? So in Europe, a like electric guitar when I saw all these people doing things with electric guitar and things like that. Well, do you learn your instrument? Do you know how to play it before you get into all these weird sounds and shit you can do with electronics? It's like people play with a computer. You can do that, but you have to know something about music. And I felt a lot of people come to improvise music as if they can do whatever the fuck they want. In fact, you can't do whatever the fuck you want, In fact, there's always a musical aspect to what you do, okay? Now, I've never been a critic of anybody's work. I don't judge other people's work. I don't like critics in the first place. I'm more of a reviewer. So if you were reviewing my work, you have to understand what I'm doing. You have to know something about music. And if you don't know anything about music, you just come to improvise music without knowing anything about music, you have a really disadvantage. And that's a lot of people coming into improvised music without any broad basis of what they mean by music, in fact. I have such a broad view about music when I came here. World music, for instance. I mean, we were thinking about global improvisation, not European improvisation, for instance. I mean, Don Cherry and a whole bunch of us talking about global improvisation. We're talking about space music, too. We're talking about a whole bunch of things that the improvising community, coming from the American improvising community, different ideas. So the synthesizer, for me, was a modern 21st century instrument. Just like the computer, all these things you have to learn how to use. There's nothing anti about them. I'm a technological artist of the 21st century. If you're not, it's like learning how to record, learning how to do your own thing. This is what these things are for, actually. You have a computer, you can record, like I'm doing this recording, So those things you have to do. So that article from Julian is a reflection, and I'm only doing that to upgrade my own person by give you a slight history of what maybe my thinking is about. Since other people do not, jazz magazines around the world do not really want to know what Alan Silva thinks about orchestral synthesizers, and their place in free jazz. Well, I don't know about that. My place in music has always been a musician, an improvising artist. I said that in 1960. I do improvisations. That's what I do. I make my own music up. So, if you understand that article, just thank you, Julian, for making me do this little video on your recitation. Thank you very much. I hope everybody enjoyed that.
Where did you